I almost made $1,000 mistake my first year of RV life, and I didn't even know it was happening until the damage had already started. I remember sitting inside my RV one night, watching the battery percentage drop, trying to decide if I should keep the fan running or save what was left for the fridge. The air inside was getting warm, the fan felt like a luxury, and I was staring at the battery monitor, knowing I couldn't run everything. At that time, I had regular lead acid batteries. It was a long time ago. And up until then, I thought I had everything handled. I had water in the tank, power in the batteries, the RV was parked and level, or at least I thought it was, and enough gear to stay out for days without worrying about it. What I didn't realize was that the one detail I had been ignoring from the very beginning was quietly putting $1,000 component at risk every single time I stopped. The RV was parked and level, or at least I thought it was. That assumption is what caused the problem. I didn't find out right away because the problem built up so slowly I almost missed it entirely. I started noticing that the RV fridge didn't feel as cold as it used to. Nothing dramatic, just slightly off. Milk didn't feel as cold, and things weren't holding temperature the same way. At first, I thought it was outside temperature. Then I thought it was airflow. Neither of these were the problem. RV refrigerators that use absorption cooling rely on being level to operate properly. When they are even slightly off level, over time, the internal solution can overheat and begin to crystallize, which blocks proper flow and damages the cooling unit. By the time you notice something feels off, the damage has already started, and that repair is easily over $1,000. The fix that prevents all of this is leveling blocks, one of the cheapest and easiest things to carry. They keep your RV and refrigerator level, which lets the fridge operate the way it was designed and protects you from a repair bill you never saw coming. And I have been living with that detail from the very first night I mentioned it, back when I thought everything was fine, and the only decision I had to make was whether to keep the fan running. So, what does your next chapter look like? That was the biggest one, but over my first year, I found a lot of other gaps I hadn't planned for. Here's what I wish I had from day one. The first place I noticed something was off was with the water. I always assumed a full tank meant I was fine, but living out of an RV changes how fast you go through it. Showers, dishes, drinking, it all adds up fast. And when that tank drops while you're miles from the fill station, it's not something you can put off. I remember one stop where I had to start rationing without planning to, and that was when I realized I needed more flexibility. Now I handle it differently. I carry portable water jugs, collapsible water bladders, two 50-foot hoses, and three 5-gallon BPA-free food-grade buckets because I learned the hard way that not every bucket sitting on a shelf is actually safe for drinking water. The change that made the biggest practical difference was figuring out how to refill my fresh water tank without moving the rig at all. If you've ever broken down a campsite, driven to a fill station, and set everything back up just to top off a tank, you know how much time and effort that burns for something that should be simple. Now, I fill my buckets from whatever water source is nearby, drop in a submersible water pump, and transfer directly to the RV freshwater tank, right where I'm parked. The whole process takes minutes. The rig stays exactly where it is, and I stop planning my stops around fill station locations the same way I stopped planning them around the dump stations. But the bigger moment came when I checked what I was actually drinking. I was standing at a campground spigot, clearly labeled potable, filled a glass, and decided to run a TDS reading just out of curiosity. That's total dissolvable solids. I didn't expect anything unusual, but when the display settled, it showed it around 680. At that point, I wasn't just drinking water. I was drinking whatever minerals, salt, and residues that water had picked up along the way, and I had never questioned it before. That was the moment I stopped assuming anything about water coming out of a campground hookup. Now I run a tankless reverse osmosis system that removes chlorine, fluoride, arsenic, and other dissolved contaminants. Then adds minerals back in so the water actually tastes clean instead of flat. It also boosts up the pH to 7.5. The real-time TDS display on the unit means I could check what I'm working with anywhere I park instead of guessing. If you've checked, what is the worst reading you've ever pulled from a tap that was supposed to be safe? If this video is helping you avoid mistakes, please like this, take a second, and hit subscribe. I share what actually works out here. Once my water situation was handled, I started paying attention to everything else I had been taking for granted. And every week I stayed out longer. I found other gaps I hadn't planned for. The first one most people don't think about until they're already frustrated by it is dump station logistics. You're planning your routes around where you can empty around where you can empty a tank instead of where you actually want to go, you already know how much of your trip that decision controls. I kept putting the composting toilet off because it felt like a bigger change than it was. And when I finally made the switch, that entire calculation disappeared. No chemicals, no dump schedule, no smell. I managed it correctly, and I stopped losing hours of every trip to a problem that should have been solved on day one. The next gap was something I didn't take seriously until I was parked on a remote stretch with a slow tire leak and with no gas station within range. A tire losing pressure in a location where you can't easily get help isn't just inconvenient. It's a safety problem, and I had no good answer for it until I started carrying a portable air compressor that runs off my 12-volt system. It takes up almost no space, it handles every tire on the rig, and it has kept me moving in situations that would otherwise have meant me sitting and waiting for someone to come to me. And I was still making the mistake that was going to cost me most without knowing it yet. The one that crept up on me more slowly was the physical load of managing everything solo. If you've ever spent a week loading and unloading heavy gear, jugs, gear bags, and equipment by yourself, you know that what feels manageable on day one becomes generally wearing by day 5. And when you're remote and something goes wrong with your back, you don't have the option of taking a few days off. I bought a portable folding dolly that removed that risk entirely. It folds up in seconds, folds flat when I don't need it, and handles the kind of repeated heavy loads that would otherwise add up in ways I wasn't willing to accept. Heat was another gap I thought I had covered with the RV's built-in system until I started spending serious time in cold weather and realized how much propane and power that system burns overnight just to keep the temperature livable. I bought a small Mr. Heater portable propane heater and a small propane tank, which gave me the ability to heat the space I was actually in without running the full system, which meant I was preserving resources I needed for everything else and staying warmer faster when temperatures dropped unexpectedly. The last addition I made before I felt like the living environment was actually dialed in was an air purification system. In a sealed space where you're cooking, sleeping, running gear, and coming in and out from the outside every day, the air quality inside the RV builds up in ways that affect how you sleep and how you feel after days in the same environment. And because you're always inside it, you stop noticing the change until you step out and come back in with a fresh perspective. Running a quality air purifier was one of those changes that I felt immediately and couldn't imagine going without after the first week. What I hadn't fully planned for across all these additions was what running everything together would do to my power. That same night, when I was watching my battery drop, I realized the load wasn't just the fridge or the fan anymore. It was everything combined: refrigeration, lights, charging devices, the water system pulling power continuously in the background, and now a growing list of tools, comforts that all had to draw on their own. That's when it clicked that my setup wasn't built around how I actually lived. I solved the problem by rebuilding around that exact moment because I never wanted to sit there again deciding what I had to turn off. I now run 16 kilowatts of lithium battery capacity because my old setup dropped too fast overnight, and that drop is exactly what forced a fan versus fridge decision in the first place. I also run 1.4 kilowatts of solar, 3 portable power stations between 1,000 and 2,400 watts each, and 2 12-volt dual refrigerator freezers that I keep running continuously as long as I have solar input that keeps up with the demand. Every part of the system exists because something specific failed before it was there. I carry 4 portable solar panels because I parked in the shade and watched my roof panels produce almost nothing while the sun was still right there, just out of reach. I've walked those panels across campsites more times than I can count, chasing sunlight, just to stay charged. My RV also has a 4,000-watt own-in generator for the days when the clouds don't break, because I've learned quickly that relying on perfect conditions is what forces you to leave when you're not ready. A few weeks after I got the power site under control, I drove into a canyon on a remote stretch of road where the terrain blocked most of the signal. Everything in the RV was working perfectly. Batteries were full, the fridges were holding temperature, lights were on, and my phone had no signal at all. I was completely cut off, with no way to check the weather, no way to reach anyone if something went wrong out there. And that's when I understood that all the power in the world doesn't help you if you can't connect when it matters. Now I use Starlink, and it gives me a reliable connection in many places where cell service just doesn't work, as long as I have a clear view of the sky. Anyway, for more great videos on RV life, boondocking, safety, solo traveling, please click one of my videos over here. See you down the road.